Okay, sweet. How's things your side?
Going well, pal. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of months with a lot of rugby
Yeah.
returning, a lot of events and everything. But no, it's been really positive, you know.
And you're commentating for New Zealand versus US. I saw a bit of it.
Yeah, that was definitely a highlight. I haven't had a chance ever to call the All Blacks, and
Yeah,
so
that's
they've
awesome.
only been here twice in 20 years,
Yeah,
whatever it was. So that was really fun to do, you know.
yeah. And so where were you you were in Canada, right? You were doing the
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Canada did two leagues there, one in
yeah,
Vancouver and then one in Edmonton. And unfortunately, because of COVID and everything else like that, they only had two tournaments for the 2021 season. But in 3 weeks' time, I'll go to Dubai and start off the
okay.
2022 season. There'll be two tournaments back to back, one without fans end of November, and then one with fans beginning December. So that should be pretty epic. And they're promoting it hard. And then the series should keep going with another, it should be a full 10 stops for the men. I think about seven for the woman, and then the Sevens World Cup in hopefully Cape Town in
Yeah.
September.
And
So yeah,
that's
epic. We'll
so
meet up then,
yeah, of course. And Canada Sevens, I think did SA take that one,
Yeah, South Africa won both.
Yeah, South
So they
Africa
were
one.
unbeaten. Yeah, unbeaten in both, which is really cool. I mean, they're a very strong team, huge
Yeah.
depth. There were 6 or 7 teams missing because of COVID and travel restrictions. So without the likes of New Zealand and Fiji and even Australia and things, South Africa, they had competition, but not as strong as it normally would be for the tournament. But again, they were even saying that with those teams there, South Africa had the team and had such great chemistry. They would have beaten anybody on the day. And
Yeah.
so even though they won the series, there'll be always be a little asterisk next to it because it was quite a truncated series.
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
You know, I'm definitely going to try and get into doing a couple more of the sevens players. But I did
nice.
a couple of weeks ago. I did Dylan Sage. You know Dylan Sage.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Dylan
Great.
Sage was awesome. Was nice to
Yeah,
get some insight into all that.
yeah,
Um,
that's fantastic.
yeah. So maybe if you could give a quick intro to yourself and just where you're at right now and your path and everything like that. Just a little quick intro.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, and basically when I finished at university, UCT, I wanted to take a gap year between college and work in the working world, and I had an
Yeah.
opportunity to go to Los Angeles. There was a friend there who was playing some rugby, so I got a chance to play rugby there. And so, interesting about the rugby community, once you kind of, get settled and you have some plans, they really look after you. And so they invited me to come back again for another season. And I never left. I met my wife to be at the time, got married, played sevens for the USA, and then got into broadcasting shortly after that. So quite a different trajectory. I wouldn't have thought I'd be in the US that long or kind of go that route. And so it was pretty remarkable and amazing. I didn't even know you could play rugby for another country.
Yeah. And so the beginning of your days, starting at Bosch, well, I don't know. So the beginning of your rugby days in school, where did that start off?
Yeah, so my parents were from the Cape Town area. Or my father actually spent a bit of time though in the Eastern Cape. So I went to Dale Junior School for my first 3 years, and I
Okay.
started rugby there when I was 8 years old or so, playing in the under 9 side. And then I think about under 10 was when my father first noticed that I was actually starting to contribute on the field,
Yeah.
tackling a few people and stuff like that. So it was really cool. But then we moved back to Cape Town, where I was born, and I went to Rondebosch Junior School, and that's where really fell in love with sports. Just being outside playing, whether it was touch rugby, playing cricket, swimming, or doing any kind of outdoor activity. I was absolutely in love with it. I think Rondebosch was the real key for me personally to provide a solid structure,
Yeah.
obviously a bunch of friends, and the fields that Rondebosch have are unrivaled in the world. If you look at the access you have, so my
Yeah.
favorite memories, sure, was playing rugby there from under 11 all the way to under 19, but it was really every afternoon going to play touch rugby with a bunch of friends and throwing the ball around and just having a great time outside. That was really a highlight to this day.
Yeah. And throughout your age groups at Bosch, what were your teams like? Which teams were you based in throughout high school and everything? Of course, first team and all that.
Yeah, so I was lucky that when I started, as any new kid that comes to a school, you don't start on the A
Yeah.
side, you start on the B side, right? So when I was 11, I started on the B side, and one of my friends was like, he's like, Dallen, we've never beaten the A side until you arrived. Well, what happened is I tackled one guy who bumped into another guy. So unfortunately, two of the A side centers just got knocked out. And so, they had a couple of gaping holes there. So that's how we ended up winning that game. But no, we had some really good teams. We had players like Gareth Wright, who could kick, more than Michael Phelps. His boot was unbelievable. We had Paul Barker, who's a legend in Tully Allen Street as well. He would go on to do great things at Stellenbosch and beyond. Then as our team grew, our under 14, under 15, and the 16 team, we added in under 19. Spencer King was our head coach. We added Gubani Bobo, who's probably the most gifted schoolboy rugby player I've ever seen.
Yeah, of course.
The Samora and Oginga Sawindla, the two twins. So all three of those players came from Dale, which was quite funny because I went to Dale when I was younger. My dad matriculated from Dale, so it was kind of really cool to see those players and play alongside them. So we were very fortunate in 96. We even had Hanyani Shimangi was on our side, and a bunch of other brilliant players. So we had some very good teams. We were fortunate to beat Bishops, Weinberg, and Sachs, in both matches, 96 and 97. And 97, we had some really, really big results against some of the Afrikaans schools, which were very tough, as you well know. So we beat Paul Roos for the first time in 13 years. We beat Paul Boys. We beat Bola Lampo, who had Derek Hougaard. We lost, though. One game we did lose was against Paul Khim, and Maurice Hubert was my opposite number, obviously a Springbok legend. But we really had fun, and I think the core was always there, but adding a Bobo and a couple of Swindler brothers really elevated our game.
And so positions throughout high school, obviously fly off and backline. Were you always there?
Yeah, good question. Center was always my favorite position, and I played that outside of my very first game. I think they put me at flank when I was 8 years old, but flank and center are really similar anyway, in terms of you want to smash people and run, So center, always outside center. That was my favorite position. I felt like I got more space to be able to create and step and do more things. And then on defense, even though I was a very undersized center, I loved tackling, and particularly launching myself back in the day where, it wasn't illegal to smash somebody, and dive at them. And so that was my favorite thing to do. I played wing a couple of times when I was a first team in 96, because they had some established centers. And then I moved back to outside center when I was my final year. But even at UCT, I played number 13. That was my, I just loved being able to, the opposition would throw a miss pass and their center would be looking at the ball and you come in at a blind angle and tackle them, even if they were double your size.
Yeah. And you were E what? Which year did you finish off?
Yeah, 97. So the Rondebosch's 100th anniversary. So it was kind of a really prestigious year to be a part of. And obviously the rugby results were really, really great. We had some great rivals, though. Daniel Vickerman, rest his soul. He played against us throughout the years. And Stuart Abbott. Stuart Abbott was a player from Bishops that I really, really admired growing up. I would watch him when we'd go to Rondebosch Bishops at Piley Reese Field. I lived a block away on Park Road from Bishops. So I would actually go there often and watch some of their games when I was younger. And Stuart Abbott was just such a brilliant center. He would go on, obviously, to win a World Cup with England. And so it was cool to play against him. He carved us up. Even though we won the game, he still carved us up in the back line.
And what do you think made you guys special in your under 19, in that whole team with Bobo and all those guys? What gave you guys the edge over others?
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer. People who look at the results from that year wouldn't believe that we, in under 16, we won one game, 2 games in the whole year. We had a disastrous season. It wasn't for lack of trying. It wasn't for lack of players. We just played a bit more individually, where I think in 96 and 97, we came together a bit better and played as a team. And Gubani Bobo always had this saying, swing it. So as in move the ball, don't necessarily take it into contact. You don't have to. And I think that kind of Sevens elusive style that he embodied, we picked up as well. And we had the skills to do it. I think traditional rugby in South Africa, particularly, some of the, if you look at a test match type thing, it's kicking a lot, using the forwards a lot, not a lot of creative running, but we really did love spreading the ball, and we had a brilliant backline. So I think that was fantastic. Our forwards were able to throw it around too. So just that chemistry, I think. And I think another thing too, which teams underestimate, is having a preseason tour. Having a tour where you can play 5 or 6 matches against opposition that doesn't really matter the scoreline, you're just building as a squad. And Spencer King knew that, and he took us to the UK in 96. And we had a great tour together. A lot of us, like me, younger players to the side, really, learned how to kind of absorb the pressure at that higher level, if you will. And so when we came back to South Africa and played sides there, we were gelled together. We did a couple of tours up to St. Stithians rugby, played against Affies, and those monstrous schools. So those kind of preseason tournaments really gelled us as a side, and we knew each other well. That's the other thing. Like a player like Gareth Wright, Richard Smith, Paul Barker, those guys that I played since I was 10, 11 years old, we knew each other. You could throw a no-look pass and they would catch it because they knew that's what you did at training, and you'd follow them likewise. So that kind of knowledge of each other was really great. We're playing Bishops. There's still some of my favorite memories with them running from their change room to Rondebosch, playing at home in our white jerseys. Just those gives me goosebumps all the time,
And your final game against Bishops, so your last game for Bosch against Bishops, how did that go?
Yeah, that was still remember it vividly. It's funny because you look back on a rugby career, sporting career, and everyone plays hundreds of games, and you might not really remember the game, but I remember that game very well. Number one, it was terrible conditions. It had rained the night before, and it was soaking wet. I think it may have even rained a bit during the game, but we, and we're wearing white jerseys, so we're diving everywhere. But despite the conditions, we were able to score 4 or 5 tries. We were able to throw the ball around. The skill set was fantastic. We really shut them down, and was really fun. Andrew Martin scored one of the great tries. It was a planned move where the blindside wing came in off a scrum, and he sliced through. So that just started us on a high. I think Bobo scored a try as well, and a couple other great movements. It was really fun, So we ended on a high, and we celebrated that night like you would never believe.
Yeah, I can imagine. And then, so finishing off your school career and then leaving school, like you said earlier, going across to the US. But how exactly did that come about? What was that your original plan when you left? Did you have a plan, or if you can just give me some insight into that?
Yeah, I'll first touch on after school, and I think that's a very important time period too. So when I was at Rondebosch, there were a lot of overseas UK folks that did a gap year. They came to Rondebosch and were like in the boarding house and coached sport, and I really got on with them really well. A lot of guys from England, and they told me, because I was interested in that, they said, listen, you could do the same in England. So I got a chance to go to Devon, the beautiful countryside in England, to a very small school called Kelly College in Tavistock, and so I got the position there because one of the guys came to Rondebosch and did the same thing. So I had a great year there coaching sport, particularly rugby, and I played a bit of sevens actually because I was 18 years old, so I could join the team in some of their sevens tournaments and working there. And so after that year out, I was quite inspired then to study, and went to Cape Technicon and did a marketing degree there. My father was always very big on, rugby is a great sport, and you could work in the sport or you could play at a high honors, but you always need your education and your degree. And I was very interested in marketing and advertising. So while I studied there, I played rugby at UCT. And it was kind of cool because UCT gave me a partial scholarship for rugby, so I could use some of the money to pay for my tuition. So it was really kind of great. And at UCT, I really had the time of my life because we had a really good rugby side. You had players coming from all over. A lot of my newer friends are from Durban, and they certainly enjoyed the post-match activities and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And it was really cool because, James, we had like a bunch of Bishops players that I played against, a bunch of Sachs, Weinberg, all coming together at UCT, playing for the same side. And also playing against all those Afrikaans schools we used to play at. The Stellenbosch combined, obviously, all the huge famous Afrikaans schools. We had Schalk Burger, we played against him at Stellenbosch. And so that, I think, was really unique and amazing. And I obviously loved rugby, but I didn't know how it would go playing against, all these other schools and other teams. And I was fortunate enough to captain the UCT under-20 side. And we would have a guy called Brent Russell that burst onto the scene as a young player. He played flower for us, and he was untouchable, and basically made the Springbok sevens, and then he played Springboks later that year. So we were lucky to have an unbeaten season, a very rare one. The last time UCT had an under-20 unbeaten season at that stage was when Nick Mallett was captain, many decades before. So that was very epic. We played first team together, Brent and myself, and had some great moments there. And so after UCT, I was thinking I needed to do another gap year like I did after high school, after Bosch. And so that's when the US opportunity opened up. I thought, let me just do 1 year there. In fact, I got a 6-month visa and joined a rugby club in Los Angeles and loved it. They did 15s. They were quite a Division 2 side. So they weren't that that competitive, but we had a great time. But what really was amazing was during the summer, we had 6 to 8 tournaments where we traveled all over. We went to San Diego, Santa Barbara, Las Vegas, and all these different amazing sevens tournaments. And sevens is what was my real passion in rugby, was actually
Yeah.
playing sevens. Although at Bosch and UCT, we did one tournament a year and that was it, right? So we didn't really get a chance to do a proper season. So playing sevens there, I fell in love with sevens and really wanted to pursue that as a, as a hobby, if you will. And from there, after I got married, the US sevens coach gave me a call after a big tournament we went to. The top 16 teams in the country compete here every year in club nationals, and we had a good team and did really well. I didn't know that anybody was really watching, and then he invited myself and a few other players to try it for the US Eagles. I turned him down because I said I'm South African and I'm not American. He said, "Well, you've been married, you're becoming a citizen, you've been in the country for 3 years at that time, you're eligible to play on the series you've selected." And so that's kind of how my journey started there with the US sevens team.
And to take it back quick to your UCT days, so varsity cup and all that, was it like it is now, or was it slightly different, or
yes, we did. Good question again. We didn't have varsity cup back then. We just played in the league with Stellenbosch, and Stellenbosch had two teams. So they had their Victorian side, who were brilliant as well. So it was kind of unfair for them. But so back then, no, none of that. But when we played Stellenbosch, I'd never forget that. It was kind of like playing Rondebosch Bishops, but obviously 10 times level, because you go to the Craven Stadium and it'd be 30,000 drunk students all over supporting you. It was a huge deal, and we had some good results there too. We drew to Stellenbosch in my final year there, 8-all at intervarsity, and then we won the return game against Marties, which was unheard of back then. And again, this is a UCT side. We had a lot of great players, but we didn't actively scout around the country like they do now, and didn't have as many resources. Paul Dobson was there, John Dobson, sorry, as one of our assistant coaches. But we had an Irish coach, Barry O'Mahony, who was fantastic, and he had a good blend of, it's important how the results you produce in the field, but he was just really good about, off the field, you need to be a good citizen also, and care for your fellow player and fellow teammate. So we had a lot of fun on the field, a lot of fun off the field, particularly, in Stellenbosch when we go out after a game there, was always a classic time. And I think that chemistry as well, a lot of people underestimate, particularly in sevens too, how do you get a group close together? Well, it's doing fun stuff off the field. It doesn't have to be drinking, but you just do fun activities together where you get to bond and make fun of each other and become closer,
Yeah, no, of course. And you were in LA playing rugby, and that experience for you of when you first touched down US and started your rugby journey overseas there, how was that for you? Did you feel like you were above everyone else in a way, or did you feel, I don't know, if you could just...
Yeah, it was unique to go to a country like the US, where I didn't know much about the rugby landscape. I didn't know the level of play. As I said, our club was a lot of American rugby players that had picked up the game about 20 years old or 25 years old at college. So they're very new at the game, but were eager to learn. The athletic abilities were fantastic. I will say the strength and conditioning, the speed was unrivaled. And just a couple of little tweaks. So I kind of like joined as a player, sure, but I was helping coach the back line and bring in a couple of skills that they hadn't looked at before. And we had a great fun throwing the ball around and that sort of thing. And that's why that sevens team we were a part of was really great, because we had some very good American athletes. We added a few technical items to it. And that team was called the Occidental All Boys, and that's Barack Obama went to Occidental College in LA, and that was just the alumni side. We then merged with a brilliant team called Belmont Shore in there's the Long Beach region, who brought a bunch of excellent players. Some of them would go on to play for the US 7s to 15s. So I think the hybrid of the team there were a lot of Polynesian players, there were a bunch of players from New Zealand and all over. So there, I felt more at home with players that have played since they were 5 years old, and that was really exciting to play alongside those players. But yeah, the level was a mixed bag. In some of the sevens games you'd win by 60 points, and some of the other games you would lose because there'd be a bunch of other good sides. I played against Todd Clever and a bunch of those players that I'd seen on TV playing for the US, and there he was just playing club rugby, and it was really cool. Taku Ngwenya, who would become famous for rounding Brian Banner at the World Cup in 2007, was one of our teammates on the seven series for a little while, and so it was really amazing, and he was like me too, coming from another country representing the USA. So it was really cool to be able to meet those players and grow and increase the level as we went along our career.
And if you look back at the standard of US rugby and how it's progressed over the years to now, what do you think about that, of when you first got there and what it looks like now?
Yeah, it's been about 18 years since I first touched down,
Yeah,
and it
it's a
has
long
been
time.
remarkable. Yeah, remarkable to
Yeah,
see the Sevens World Series, for example, the side, the men and the women's sevens teams have been absolutely fantastic.
yeah,
And this is the thing, when we started in playing on the Sevens World Series, when I joined the team in 2007, we weren't a core side. The USA would only play in 3 to 4 tournaments per year. So we played in the Hong Kong Sevens, we played in the LA Sevens when it was there, and then moved to San Diego, and then we played in one other, like the Wellington Sevens in New Zealand. And that
okay,
was it. So because we did really well, we had players like Taco Nguyen, I mentioned, Todd Clever, Chris Wiles, who are going to become a premiership winner with Saracens for several times, and a bunch of other guys, Matt Hawkins from South Africa, out of
yeah,
Durban. We then were invited to 6 tournaments the following year in 2008. And then 2009, we were invited to be a full core team on the series. So that was a big step for the US. We got more funding. We were able to travel more and play against the best sides as opposed to just being an invitational team. And so
yeah,
you can track the progress from there to Mike Friday's team in 2019, 10 years later, that finished second in the world. You can see in sevens how how countries are able to do that, number one, because 15s
yeah.
is a lot different. You really don't have a side outside the top 10 in the world that can compete with those sides. And the US is
Mm-hmm.
a good example where their 15-a-side team got beaten by the All Blacks by 100. The gap is there in 15s, but in sevens it is closed. And you have countries like Spain and countries like Chile and things like that can
Yeah,
cause upsets to the bigger established rugby nations. And that's, well, for me, the really exciting part about being in broadcasting and seeing the game grow is that all the nations can be competitive. Where a Rugby World Cup for 15s, you really don't see many winners. First of all, outside of England, New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa, you don't see other countries being able to compete that much in the latter stages of a tournament like that.
yeah. And why was that you, so you were saying you were in, so when you first started playing for the sevens, you guys were invitational. So how did that work that you weren't on the full tour?
Yeah. So it's
Full
based on results.
series? Oh,
So
okay.
we were invitational side because the World Rugby have always wanted the US and Canada to be competitive and invite them in more tournaments. So we won several games during the 2007 and 8 season where we would beat Australia, we would beat in England with Ben Gollings playing, we would beat Samoa. So all
Okay.
these core sides, meaning they would play in all stops, and back then there were only 8 stops. They played in all of them, but because we beat all of them, there's only sides we didn't beat in my career was South Africa. We lost 15-14 was the closest time in San Diego, and we didn't beat New Zealand, but we beat every other side at least once. And so that warranted us a position to get more tournaments and then become a core side. And I think we finished only 10th on the series in 2009, but still the series is a very tough one when our players were part-time, right? So we got paid
Yeah.
$100 a day when we were training with the US team. Outside of that, we'd go home and work our day jobs, where South Africa were full-time rugby players playing sevens. And so
Yeah.
that's, there's a big difference there with strength and
Of course.
conditioning and tactics and everything else like that. But, now the side's full-time, the US, and for the women and the men, they're extremely competitive. And with sevens these days, any one of the top 8 sides can win a tournament.
Yeah. I think that's what makes it so different and so much more appealing to so many more people. And like you said, how many more small countries, I wouldn't even call Kenya really a small sevens country anymore, but countries like that who can get upsets, and that's what makes it awesome.
Yeah, it really does. Seeing Kenya on the stage and winning
Yeah.
tournaments and beating sides, it's really great too, because, as a fan watching an event, you tune into the day 2 of a tournament where the knockouts are going, and you don't always have to realize what the team is playing for. But when they're playing in their last game and, Kenya beats somebody big, even if it's for 3rd place or 5th place or 7th, it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily matter as much. But these sides are putting in performances that their countries can be proud of, their fans can get behind. And I think that's really exciting. And I know the sevens, format's going through some changes. They're trying to make it more broadcast friendly, because it is tough. You can't sit there for 10 hours per day for 2 days to watch a tournament. You kind of want to have bite-sized, games come through. And so they did more recently, they did a 2-hour window on each end of each day where some of the bigger games were featured, and they kind of made a show around that. And so that's kind of the way forward, I think, to make it more manageable for TV and audiences.
Yeah. I understand that completely. And your years through the sevens with US, so when did you first get added into the squad? How many years were
Yeah,
you
so
in?
Yeah, so 2006 was the first time I was invited to camp for the USA
Okay.
Sevens team, and we did a camp at West Point.
Yes.
It was about 60 players came out, and 12 of us were selected to go to Singapore and playing the Singapore Sevens and the Bangkok Sevens, which is not part of the series, but it's kind of a build-up tournament.
Okay.
And so that was really great experience. We won the Bangkok Sevens, and we lost to the Blue Bulls of South Africa actually in the Singapore Sevens. So it was kind of cool to play against them and get some experience. And then after that's when I played on the Seven Series officially in 2007, 8, and 9. I played in 12 tournaments around the world. And then I also got a chance to go to the Rugby World Cup Sevens qualifiers in the Bahamas. So we beat Canada in the final there to qualify as America's number 1. And then I got a chance to go to Dubai in 2009 for the Sevens World Cup. I was a traveling reserve, so I didn't get a chance to play, but I was there with the squad, which is great as well. And so that was kind of a really, I mean, I didn't expect to play international sevens, particularly not for the USA. So that was really a dream come true and amazing to kind of be involved on the field there. And then after that, I've always been interested in media, marketing, broadcasting, and things like that. So the transition from there to work with the US team was kind of natural. So in 2011, I went with the team as the USA media manager to the Rugby World Cup in New Zealand for the USA. So I got a chance to travel with the side and help on all the media, different angles and things like that, which is great. And then I got a chance to go to Russia, was the USA media manager with the men's and women's side in 2013 for the Sevens World Cup. And that was an epic tour to go to, countries you would never really travel to on holiday, but rugby took you there, and it was a very unique and amazing experience to be part of that in a different capacity.
And so you're traveling through your Sevens days and going on the different tours around the world. How did you find that? And how was that experience for you? Was it tough for you, or manageable, or the moving and everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I do a lot of the travel. So even if you don't play on the Sevens World Series and our broadcast, I was involved in 2019. I was involved with 6 of the 10 stops, plus the Rugby World Cup 15s in Japan for a month, plus Argentina, the World Rugby Under 20 Championship. So I would say I'm probably busier now traveling than I was then. Yeah. But yes, traveled a lot then. It was very tough, obviously, on my wife and myself, because you're away for 3 weeks at a time, because you go into camp for a week. We train in San Diego at the Olympic Training Center there, and then you'd go travel to the 2 tournaments. You'd be back-to-back tournaments. So 3 weeks is a long time. You come back for a month and go again for 3 weeks. So it was a lot, definitely on the travel. I enjoy traveling. I don't mind going the distances at all, because the destinations you get to are remarkable. And the great thing is, back then it was you representing your adopted country, the USA, and you were really put up in nice places. You were well looked after. We'd always go and visit a lot of schools to try help with the growth of the game in whatever country we're in. And I loved that. Very passionate about youth development. And it was surreal, because you're playing, in my regular day job, in the US, just doing whatever you were doing. And then the next weekend you're in New Zealand at the Westpac Cape Town, and you're in front of 40,000 people on TV playing for the USA. So it really was surreal and an amazing experience. In South Africa, I got a chance to play in the George Sevens. Okay. So while it's not as big as the Cape Town Stadium and everything else, it was really cool, because I got to play in front of family and friends. And that was really, a homecoming moment for me to be able to represent the USA and be there and play in front of family. It was fantastic.
And playing against South Africa. So how many times, I guess you wouldn't be able to answer. How many times do you think you played against South Africa throughout?
South Africa, probably 5 or 6 times. Every time was special. Yeah, very special. Awesome. Very special. It was very weird playing against South Africa. Obviously, you knew they would be there at every tournament. Always a front runner, and it was really cool, because some of the players I either went to schools, like Carl Brown was there, Sax Boy, and so there's a bunch of guys who went to different schools that I knew of, and I'd played either UCT with. So Umpo Mbozo played for UCT, and I played against him on the 7 Series. Gubani Bobo was probably the teammate of mine from high school. We played against each other at the Wellington Sevens. So that was pretty amazing and surreal, and a special moment, because in South Africa, I knew I wasn't able to get to represent South Africa in sevens. Obviously, it was a dream of mine to be able to play for South Africa, but it was great to be able to play against them. And I swapped a jersey with Frankie Horn, and so I have his number 3 Blitzbock jersey. He's got my USA jersey. So definitely special memories and special people along the way. And even to this day, you obviously keep in touch with players you played against or played with. So I have a podcast these days, and we had Frankie on chatting about the old days, and a bunch of players like Ben Gollings, obviously still the all-time leading point scorer. So to be able to kind of connect with them post-career, I think is really interesting and really cool, and be able to work together, do a few different things with those players is special as well.
And that combination of your US team, was it mostly US guys, or was it a lot of guys like yourself coming to an adopted country and stuff like that?
Yeah, I would say it's about 50% of the squad we were born in other countries. And
Okay.
so when Bruce Springsteen would play the song Born in the USA and we'd run out of the San Diego Sevens, we would chuckle to ourselves when we were huddling, looking around. I was like, hold on, South African, Kiwi,
Yeah, yeah,
Samoan, Tongan. So we did have a good mix. It was kind of that is the nature of the US, though. It is such a melting pot of people that have come from all over the world to pursue different
yeah,
careers. And it's not unlike rugby. You go to every single club here, you'll hear a lot of different accents. You obviously have a lot of American-born players, and you talk about the growth of American rugby. The real growth has been the youth component, the young girls and boys that have picked up a rugby ball, now starting age 5 and 6 all the way through. Yeah. And while they might not continue to be rugby players all the way through, they at least do get that great experience of the camaraderie, the friendships, the ethos of the game, which is completely different to a lot of the individual American sports. And so a lot of people, who get involved with rugby are passionate about it. A lot of young American folks are finding the game for the first time, and they're thrilled by it because as a game, it is safer than a lot of the other sports that they've tried. But it's got all those other elements to it, the off the field ones that really build character.
And do you think there's also an aspect like how it's international and representing your country, whereas in NFL or something like that, there's no such thing as that. It's clubs and that playing against each other. Do you think that
I think that's a huge component. You're so right.
Yeah.
James, I had a chat with somebody this past weekend. The New England Patriots were playing, and I was saying to them, isn't it interesting how these players are representing their region, and it's very divided. Obviously, New York versus Boston. Those are huge rivals. But when rugby comes around, you represent your country. So if you support South Africa, USA, New Zealand, that Saturday, everybody's wearing the colors of that country and unifying everybody together. And so he was blown away by the concept. He's like, no, we don't really do that unless it comes to Olympic Games. And even then, not all the sports that they enjoy potentially are in the Olympic Games. So it really is a different story. And I think, rugby has that international community, though. I think another point of it too, which is like when I came here just with a pair of rugby boots and, just keen to join a club, and all of a sudden I met 30 new friends. Someone gave me a job. Someone gave me an old car. Someone said, you can stay at my place for a while. So those kind of things I think is really cool about rugby. You can go anywhere in the world and you can be accepted into the community just because you play the sport or love the sport.
Yeah. And just chatting on how sevens is more progressive and bigger in the US than the 15s. Why do you think that is? And when you are playing rugby, say for a club or something, as like a 16-year-old or 15-year-old in the school, are you playing 15s, or is there more emphasis on sevens, or how does that work?
Yeah, so traditionally there still is a lot. If you're playing rugby, you're playing 15s when you start out. But the interesting thing is, because sevens is such an easy sport to enter with less of the complicated laws that you have to adhere to, obviously less technical aspects like scrumming and lineouts.
Yes.
A lot of players that are newer to rugby from America take to sevens quickly, because really it's about their athletic ability, which they can shine through. So even on the international stage, you've got a player like Colin Isles that picks up a rugby ball, and in 7 months after picking up a ball, he's playing international sevens and carving it up. So, even the defensive side of things are a little bit easier to pick up in the game of sevens. So while yes, the traditional game is still 15s here, when a player comes to join a club, when sevens rolls around, enrollment numbers tend to swell. More people tend to come out and try it because it's a bit easier to, dabble a little bit in sevens and join a game and type thing than it is to 15s. Yeah. And I think as a coach, because I coached a college, Occidental College as well, when I was living in LA still, it was very interesting to have football players come across and not know anything about rugby. Some of the football players had never touched, the football because they were on the defensive side. So even their catching and passing was completely foreign. Be able to run, catch and pass was unheard of to some of the players. While they could run tremendously fast and were so big and strong, you had to really focus on those basic core skills. Yeah. And once they got those skills, it was amazing to see what they can do on the field. And they all loved the thing about rugby, which other sports like American football don't have, is that it's continuous. So the game never stops really. Yes. And you have to
unlike NFL.
Exactly. You have to be available to contribute on both sides of the ball. Yeah. So some of the football players that came through, they were, defensive players, and they're like, hold on, I get to run and I can score. I was like, absolutely. If you can knock somebody up and score, please do. So they were just enthralled that you could do both in the same game. And at the drop of a hat, a knock on meant the other team picked it up and they were attacking. All of a sudden you had to defend. And so it was a really, really cool concept, and cool to see how excited these players were for switching over,
And so the whole league setup that you guys have going on, and the club setup and all that, how is that progressing over the last few years and getting more guys from outside, from foreign guys to come in, South Africans and all that, maybe a few more bigger names and that. How is that whole, I don't want to get it wrong, what do you guys call it? The USM?
Yeah, Major League
Major League
Rugby.
MLR.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
MLR. Yes.
Yeah. So how is that all coming together over there? How is that league doing and all that?
Yeah, that's another great question. So Major League Rugby is only 4 years old. And I think what's important
Okay.
here is that if you track a team like Japan that were obviously, beat South Africa at a World Cup
Yes.
In 2015, and then 2019 were arguably the breakout performance of any side there. They had a professional league for 10 to 15 years before that happened. The US hasn't had a
Okay.
professional
Well,
league ever. They've dabbled in a few different leagues. It's quite disjointed because the country's so big. People
yeah.
underestimate that you take a 6-hour flight, and that's getting from one coast to the other coast, from the east to the west or west to the east. Whereas in other countries like South Africa, you take a 2-hour flight and then you're out of the country almost, And so it's very tough. The conditions also, half the country is under snow for the winter, so you really can't play outdoor sports. And so that gets challenging. But Major League Rugby is the first answer where the 15's team can improve and players can be paid to play rugby domestically, which is a big deal. Before,
Yes.
all the players, if they were interested in playing rugby at a higher level and getting paid, you'd have to go to the UK or beyond. And it was tough because who's to say that you are a starting player in your team overseas and you get a lot of experience, but you might not get a lot of match time. So the players here get a lot of match time. They get to play against other international players too. So as you mentioned, a lot of players from South Africa here. I look at the roster and I can easily spot a lot of South African names, like Gamma or Van der Walt or whatever it is. And then, Matt Giddo was even playing here recently. He'll sign on again with the LA Guiltinis. So high profile players in the league is helping domestic players grow and get better as well. There is a catch-22 where a lot of people's perceptions are like, well, if you put all the international players in the key roles, key positions on the field, how do you develop American-born players to be a fly half, to be a fullback or a scrum half or a hooker? It's a great point and a great question, but I think the league will mature as it gets on. It'll expand to different cities. Right now, we had 12 teams last year. We'll have 13 this year. Dallas have joined in. So it's really going to help the game. I think if we have this conversation in another 7-8 years' time, when the league has been going for over a decade, it'll be really interesting to see where the US in the national game, 15 aside, is. And then I think it's a better judge, because you can't judge a one-off game against the All Blacks or even at the Rugby World Cup. The US has only ever won one game at a World Cup. Is the most they've won at any single World Cup, and they've done that 2 or 3 times. But outside of that, they're not obviously competitive in the top 10 in the world.
Yeah. And at the moment, what do you think of the 15 side with the qualifiers and all that's been going on? What do you think about that? I've seen they've been struggling a little bit on and off, and
yeah, they certainly have, and it's a tricky one. So, well, the cool thing is, me being a South African and American at the same time, dual citizen, Gary Gold, the South African, has been coaching the side for the last 3 years. It's been really great to connect with him, talk about his philosophy on the game and the strategies and things like that. A lot of people jump to the head coach if the team's not doing well. I think that's always tough and harsh. It's the players that really should bear the responsibility of it, and it's very tricky if the players aren't able to get together and play meaningful competition often, then it's very tough for them just to join in, train for a few days, and then play an international game. That I've found the most challenging thing about a rugby nation that doesn't have the resources to be a full-time environment all year round. So, the US, at home, they were unbeaten. Well, they in the qualifiers, they beat Uruguay at home and they beat Canada at home. I got a chance to call both those games, and they played really well for large parts of those games. But traveling away, they were beaten by Canada, and Uruguay beat them as well. So it was tough to see, because these qualifiers work on aggregate points. So it's not a matter of you win one, I win one. It's what you win by the points difference, which matters for the qualifiers. So the US will have to, next June, July, play in another qualifying series, the final one, and hopefully they can get through to the World Cup. It'll be a real shame if they don't play in the World Cup, particularly, as I said, with rugby growing here. It's being shown on television more on Fox Sports and CBS Sports. Major League Rugby is really helping that. Sevens World, the Sevens World is obviously interested in the US from a women's and a men's perspective, and then the US put a bid in to host the Rugby World Cup in 2027 or 2020 or 2031, plus the Women's World Cup in 2029.
Yes, yeah.
So there's a lot of attention here in America now about the game. And sure, while the team might not be a world beater on the 15 side when the men's side, the growth is there, and the team they do need to qualify for the World Cup, and they need to pull off an upset here or there. That would really help the game, I think.
Yeah. And so the 15 side lacking at the moment, and the 7 side obviously being in quite a good situation. With players like I've been following Colin Isles for many years now, since I've been small. That guy is just a specimen of speed and all of that. What do you think the US, like, so like you said, it's the players not coming together and all that. What do you think they could do to start becoming better
Yeah,
in
so on
these
the seven
qualifiers?
side, on the seven side, which is interesting, let's switch across there briefly. Like you mentioned, Colin Isles. The great thing is that there's a new company called Premier Sevens, and they put on their debut inaugural tournament in Memphis, Tennessee. Got a chance
Okay.
to go there and commentate that one. And there were 6 professional men's sides and 4 professional women's sides. And basically what it was is in a way creating professional experience and environment for players to be paid and play sevens. So next year, hopefully they do 4 to 6 tournaments in the US with back-to-back weekends playing professional sevens, which is really great. So that would allow the pool to get a lot bigger for the players in the men's
Yeah.
and women's programs, because right now, let's say the US contract 24 players. Well, if you're outside that 24, you don't get to play sevens. You play for your club here and there,
Okay.
very short couple months in the summer, and that's it. Where if you contracted, you train at the Olympic Training Center, you with everybody else, getting better, improving your game and raising the game of everybody else's. So I think the Premier Sevens is the way forward for the men's and women's sides to be a bit more competitive. And obviously then just playing on the series will give them that experience as well, which is great. But I think, as any nation growing and getting better, you need the base to be able to improve their rugby IQ. And how
Yeah.
does that happen? Well, it generally starts with a player picking up a rugby ball, a young girl or boy at 5 years old onwards, and enjoying the game, enjoying the friendships that come from the sport, and then continuing on. So, even if only a small percentage go on to play rugby in their adult, side of it, that's okay, as long as your base keeps growing. And I think that's an interesting point. And what I've noticed about the rugby community in the US over the last 20 years is how passionate they are and how dedicated they are, and they really want to grow the game. While the national team is not a reflection, the results are not a reflection on the brilliant work that people are doing on the ground. So I think it's always tricky to judge, a game like New Zealand. I think if the US had played another country, while they would have lost to the top 10 sides in the world, it wouldn't have been as big as that. It may have been a 40-point or 50-point result, which, you earn a bit more respect. I mean, look at New Zealand. The next week they go and play Wales and beat them by 50 points. Wales is a rugby mad country that, everybody plays the game when they're tiny. So, if they can do that to a Welsh side, it is understandable that the US, wasn't able to compete with them for the 80 minutes.
And so the broadcasting and all of that, so for the major league, how is that all working? So you said it's on Fox and all that. How do they show the games? And do you think that is like one of the main direct ways that you guys can grow the game over there?
Yeah, a great point again that you make. Getting the average sports lover to watch rugby is key to the growth here, is key to get more money from advertising and sponsorships, which I think I know that is a huge area that is lacking in USA rugby at the moment. Is funding. And how do you get funding? You show the game, and you can sell advertising for it. And so CBS Sports and Fox Sports have shown the games live, and they've chosen a game or two of the week. So let's say, this weekend is an average weekend in Major League Rugby. Let's say there are 6 games being played in different cities. CBS would have pre-chosen one of the main games. Let's say it's New York against, New England. And so that game would be on television, and then another one that maybe Fox Sports chooses. And so the great thing is that anybody that tunes on the television at those prime times, or they're watching rugby. And, us as the broadcasters, the commentators, are trying to do a balancing act of educating the new fan that is literally turning on for the first time, and not alienating the avid fan who knows the game and knows what a knock-on is. So that's fine balance between those two is what we try to do in the broadcast. Whereas if I'm commentating a Sevens World Series, that the audience is generally, they know rugby, and so you don't really have to explain it too much. You will have your analysts come in and explain some of the newer law variations or some of the things that happen here and there. But it's more of an education tool in the US with Major League Rugby, which is cool. And the tricky part, though, why the game has been slightly hampered from a broadcast point of view, is that there's an organization that own the rights to the USA national team games called Flow Rugby, and so they're behind a paywall. And I totally understand they need to make money. They're an organization. They need to make sure that they have longevity. The tricky thing for the average American that doesn't know rugby, they won't be able to see the game because it's not going to be on television if the US is playing. And while that may be a good thing when the US loses by 100 to New Zealand, that is not on TV, the other games should be on, particularly the closer games against Canada and the other sports, other games. The US women play this week, they play against Canada. And so those games are important for any young person watching, looking up. If you see the women's in action, the women's team, and you're like, I want to do that. I want to play. I want to be, the next Alev Kalto or whoever the players that they're watching and admire. That's a key driver for growth of the game, as well as playing, as well as sponsorships.
Yeah, no, of course, I get that completely. And what do you think about the young Ruben de Haas?
Oh, he's fantastic. Really, really great player. He looks like he's 15 years old. He looks so young. He is. He's only in his early 20s. A really exciting player to commentate. I love his distribution. He's got a great pass off both hands. His timing in support lines is fabulous. I was lucky commentating the game there where he nailed a drop goal, from the halfway line. Yeah, it was fantastic. He's just such an exciting player. And I think what's cool about, the US setup is that, De Haas might not have really got a look in South Africa, but players that do have eligibility in other countries, they get more playing time, they get more experience and able to play at a higher level, which is really great and exciting to see. And Gary Gold has done a good job of, when he has faith in a player, he'll pick that player week in, week out so that they have a chance to gel with their teammates and get that confidence and experience where other coaches may chop and change their team every week. And that doesn't necessarily do well for the side. And it's proven that if you choose a similar team over a long period of time, you'll have a higher winning percentage than a team that chops and changes week in, week out. Yeah.
And of course, Marcel Brachi, is he still captain? Am I correct?
He isn't captain at the moment, but he's in the squad and he's in the mix. And it's a great story because, Marcel, I didn't obviously play with him, but Rondebosch old boy, Ike Tiger old boy as well. So, we share those two things. And more importantly, a tornado for the UCT internally, the NATO. So, three great teams, and now the US, 4 teams that we share together. Marcel's a great human being. I'm excited because he finally is now going to be living in the US, where before he was based in Australia. He's going to be in the US playing with the Austin Gilgronis in Major League Rugby. So he'll add a lot of flavor to that side. He'll obviously help in the IQ, the coaching side, which will be really good too. So it'll be awesome to be able to see Marcel on a regular basis and catch up for a few cold ones as well.
Yeah. And coming towards the end, your commentating career, when that started off, like you said, you got into the media 2011 and all that. So when you finished off your rugby days, how did you transition into that? How did you start getting into the 7 series? Was it a long process? How did that all work out for you?
Yeah, I got really lucky because I've always been extremely passionate about the game of rugby and always wanted to be involved in and I got opportunities in different capacities. And I think 2 things that stood out for me. One is have an open mind and say yes to any opportunity that comes your way because you don't know where it's going to lead. And number 2, obviously work your hardest and try your best and always be on. And what I mean by always be on, always do if there's homework that needs to be done or work that you need to do, like for a commentator, your research, I pride myself in putting in the most time out of any commentator around to be able to know the players, know the venue, know the history, know the rivalry. And so you do all that homework before. And so you can set yourself up for success when you finally are on TV or doing a job. So, so the media side of things was fantastic. I wore different hats. I was helped out a little bit with some of the press articles, even though I didn't study journalism, so I helped a bit of that, social media, content creation, the media manager as well, those kind of roles. And then when I got a chance in 2012 to be on the sideline to do some broadcasting, that was an absolute thrill. So I knew a lot of the players who were playing at the time. So it was easy for me to do the post-match interviews and interview the coaches. I love talking. I love the sport of rugby. So that was a natural fit. And then shortly after that, they gave me opportunity to work in the booth as a color commentator on the analysis side. I thoroughly enjoyed that as well. But my real driver and passion was being a play-by-play caller or lead commentator that calls the live action, just because I felt like my energy matched the excitement of the game. I was able to bring, some extra things to the game, which I personally enjoy, which is, being a bit more humorous at times. Because, I think there are traditionalists who don't think you need to create a bit of humor, but I think it's always, why not? You're in the booth for so long, an 80-minute game of rugby. Why not be creative about how you say certain things, as opposed to saying a try is scored again by Ali Williams or Sam Kane? Just bring in a bit of fun and bring in a bit of creativeness. I think that is the key. So that's kind of how I got started. And then after 3 years, luckily I got a chance to call the Sevens World Series. They were looking for a South African voice, a former player, and they also were looking for somebody that knew a bit about the North American market. So it so happened that I ticked all 3 boxes coincidentally. And that was 2015, and really thoroughly enjoyed being on the 7 series, traveling around the world and talking about the game, and also representing South Africa and the USA, which is kind of cool, my 2 countries.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it must be a highlight for you, 2019 World Cup. I still remember the Canada versus South Africa game when you were commentating. We were watching that at school actually, and I still remember when you were commentating, and I was like, "Yo, no, that's Dallen Stanford. He's a Rondebosch old boy," and they were like, "What?" Didn't nobody even knew, and I was like, "Yeah, he went to school, yeah."
That's so great. Yeah, that was an unbelievable moment.
Yeah, that must have been awesome. The Kubus Reina hat trick and all that as well was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So I got a chance to work with Joel Stransky, and that was amazing for me personally. So when I was at Rondebosch, I was 16 years old, and we were actually weren't allowed to go to during school time when opening game South Africa played Australia at Newlands. So we bunked out of school. We brought a bunch of extra clothes, got our uniforms, and went across Newlands, a bunch of us, and watched Joel and the Springboks beat Australia. We watched John Olomu beat England as well. Yes. So there are a bunch of games we went to. And so from that time period, it was really amazing to be able to travel through Japan for a month with Joel. We worked closely together in the booth. And so it was really epic and an amazing experience. And to be able to call South Africa at a World Cup, I mean, just a dream come true for sure. And I got a chance to call a bunch of different countries, but that was a very special game, South Africa, and be able to add a bit of spice to it. I'd see they play the clip every now and again about Kubus Reinach, and that's really cool. But I had some environmentalists who, I had some environmentalists though who messaged me saying, you can't say that. I'm like, hey, it's just a joke. I don't mean anything else. I love the environment.
Yeah. And going forward, where do you see yourself in a couple of years' time? What's your plans going forward in the commentating world and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I love what I do. Yeah, I would be great. It depends on the selections, right? I'm always around and willing and ready to go. I think, as far as ticking things off, I did the Sevens World Cup in San Francisco in 2018, but it really would be amazing to come home to Cape Town, where I was born, where I grew up, and commentate the Sevens World Cup in September 2022. That would be really amazing. Yes. And then outside of that, it's getting to a World Cup. It is such a surreal, amazing experience. The whole world is tuning in. It is high stakes for all the teams. It's just such a infectious environment to be around. So if that opportunity comes again, I'd love to be involved. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm passionate about youth development. And so in Los Angeles, I had a program there that I helped run for about 7 years. And we're introducing the game of flag rugby to young boys and girls at elementary and middle school. And we started with about 6 different schools and ended with 100 schools taking part. And they were loving what it did off the field too. The parents were really engaged. So I think if I get back to youth development, that's something I want to definitely do and give back to the sport that way. And then continue broadcasting, because it's something you can do, anywhere. You get a chance to travel all over. I was in Turks and Caicos with my wife recently, calling the Rugby Americas North 7. So it takes you to very unique, amazing places. We're very blessed to be in a position. Very few people get selected. And I think that's an interesting thing. Playing in a Rugby World Cup, you're one of 30 players. But as a broadcaster for the host or the World Rugby provided broadcast, you're one of 8 or one of 6. Oh, wow. So it's a very unique niche market. I love what I do. I need to continue improving what I do. There's obviously things that I like, things that I don't, but I think it's just a wonderful platform to see the world and give back to the sport and provide that excitement and energy and passion. And I think for the younger audience, a lot of it is about short bite-sized bits and social media. So if I'm able to help and create a bit of buzz around that, then that's great. Keep hiring me.
And shout out to your shorts that you gave me when I was I think I was 12 or 13. Anyone that knows me will know which shorts I'm talking about, the USA shorts. I think you'll even see on my Instagram or whatever, every rugby practice probably I've ever been to was either the white shorts from Bosch or those US rugby shorts. So
that's so great. I'll get you some more kit for sure. And it's so cool awesome. You're representing there as well. And thanks for telling the Bosch guys you're watching with that you at least know the commentator with the accent, So that's good. They were honestly, Rondebosch was certainly, one of the highlights. You know, you look back at your school career and just only fond memories, and just so many good people that were at the school. And Rondebosch, the teachers really gave us a good education and a good base, and I think the values that they provided too were fantastic. You know, obviously my parents were instrumental in that too, but you know, Rondebosch, I just can't speak more highly about them, and just love my time there.
And I think also next year, so you said the World Cup year will be in September.
Yeah, September, exactly. In early September, World Cup 7, the Cape Town Stadium. That's right.
Yeah, so at Bosch next year, my matric year, it's Bosch 1 to 5 next year. So it's 125 years. And it's going to be quite a big year with like a whole bunch of stuff happening. Last Bishop's game will be huge and all that. So I think it will be perfect timing if you were out here and all of that to come together. There's going to be a lot of old boys stuff and everything like that.
That will be, James. That's epic that you're the 125 and we're part of the 100 year, you know. You make me feel really old now, that 25 years since I was there doing that game. But no, that's going to be so great. And we'll definitely plan to come out to Rondebosch. Normally when I came out to see my family in December, schools were closed, there weren't much going on, but this time there'll be things happening. So I can't wait to take part and look forward to meeting up, and I'll bring some kit as well for you to wear, you know.
Thank you, that'd be awesome. And your I don't know if it's in my cupboard right now actually. Your is it Stanford University top that you gave me? I think.
Yes, exactly. How funny is that? Well, that for me, that was a kind of personal, cool thing to be able to go to California and go to Stanford University with seeing my last name over all the different kit items. Is really cool and surreal, you know?
Yeah. Well, what team were you playing for then when you got that top?
So we were there actually with the US Sevens team. We had trained there for a little while, so I was able to be on the campus and snag a couple of things from the gift store, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. It was awesome to have you on.
Awesome, James. Well, thanks for having me. A real pleasure to talk about the good days. Particularly the Bosch memories were fantastic, you know. So thanks for everything you do, pal. And again, look forward to seeing you. Hopefully it all works out for the Sevens World Cup in 2022.
Let me just give you I think it's in my cupboard right now, actually. Let me go check quick.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. It's somewhere deep in there.
No worries.
There was a couple, but this one was the first one that was out there. I think it's too small for me now. This one that you gave me.
Yes.
I don't know if you.
Oh yes, very cool.
Yeah,
goodness. That's funny. Yeah. I can't even remember all the old stuff we had there, you know, but I'm glad you at least wore the USA kit and it worked out, you know, because some of the jerseys are way too small. They made them like really skin tight.
Oh, yeah.
And so once you wore them a couple of times, they were like shrunk. The Canterbury ones were better. They were kind of better fitting, but not the early stuff we wore. I think they were Cougar. They weren't great.
Okay. Yeah. I see. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. I'll let you know when I get it up on YouTube and all that, all the sorts.
Awesome. Okay. Brilliant stuff, James. Well, great to connect. I'm glad we finally did this. We'll keep in touch. Right.
Thanks so much.
Cool. Okay. Cheers, buddy. Bye now.